Hello and welcome to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherri Davidoff.
I am Matt Durrin, the Director of Training and Research for LMG Security.
And today we're going to talk about attacks on manufacturers, specifically the fact that Jaguar Land Rover has been taken down. It was taken down for almost 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Which impacted not just them, but also many of the vendors that supply them. Some of these poor small businesses almost went out of business and had to be bailed out with cash advances because their orders suddenly stopped. Workers came into work one day and were turned away and weren't able to come back. So this had very significant economic ripple effects.
Right. I mean, there's that cascading effect when we see like an attack like this happen. It's not just the company that gets hit, it's everyone they work with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have to say, when we published our book on ransomware back in 2022, I thought the days of like major attacks on manufacturers were over.
Oh no, it's only
I really did.
since then.
I think I was telling you like, well, we kind of missed our window, but that's probably for the best. I'm glad ransomware won't be a thing anymore. Because do you remember that was when the war in the Ukraine broke out and we saw this dip in attacks and it was like, well, guess ransomware is like not a major deal anymore.
Yeah, but now going after like industrial control systems or Internet of Things devices, that has become a huge problem lately. Like there's a lot of ransomware groups that are specifically targeting that. The Dragos report that I was reading showcased that there has been a like exponential increase in the amount of attacks that are going after those systems specifically, like Honeywell systems as an example. Yeah.
Well, I was surprised to see that Black Kite has found that manufacturing is the #1 most targeted industry 4 years in a row. And that makes sense because they have, these incredibly intense uptime requirements. They lose millions of dollars a day if their factories are shut down. So they're under real pressure to recover quickly, maybe pay a ransom demand. And at the same time, they don't have the same level of regulatory oversight. They don't have examiners. They don't have auditors, for the most part, coming in and checking their security.
Well, I mean, if you look at JLR, like they're a $38 billion a year business. And so, no big deal. It's fine. But no, I mean, if you look at like a couple of days worth of downtime for them is a huge deal. And if, like in this case, if it's 6 weeks worth of downtime, then they are losing a hefty sum of profit at that point.
Well, and when we work with manufacturers, like on tabletop exercises, a lot of times the question is, what would it take for us to fall? In fact, this just came up. What would it take for us to fall back to manual processes?
Right, yeah.
And is it even worth trying to prepare for that anymore? And I think that really came up in the case of JLR this month because they have, in the past 5 years, they've really made a push to modernize their infrastructure and to streamline it because they make luxury vehicles that cost, like $120,000 plus?
Yeah, no, Land Rovers are insanely expensive. And obviously, a Jaguar is, a luxury car by any stretch of the imagination.
And so they made this real push to modernize their software because they want to create these super custom cars. But they want to have the efficiency of a high-volume factory.
Right.
And so I read an article that quoted an expert as saying that their systems are as complex as NASA's. Actually, I worked for NASA as an intern for a brief, on a NASA-related project.
Nice name drop there.
And so, well, no, I mean, actually, I think some systems are not nearly as complex as you might expect.
I mean, I would imagine that's true.
So, it's good to think about, though. But yeah, let's dig into this. So I think because they're so interconnected, we're trying to take advantage of the whole interconnected world that we live in, but at the same time, it means that it's really hard to split off a piece of your network, for example, if you get infected with ransomware.
Right, yeah.
So they had to take down, apparently, the whole thing.
They had to take their manufacturing offline completely. And I mean, for them, like that is the business at that point in time. Like there's no real way around that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you can't make the cars, you can't sell the cars. Like
Exactly. Well, let's dig into some of these reports a little bit. So again, manufacturing was the #1 target, except for the very small businesses where it was actually professional services, which I thought was interesting. Manufacturing was #2 in those cases.
Are you going off the Sophos report on that one?
That was Black Kite, actually.
Right.
And when they started drilling down, they found that 75% of manufacturing firms have at least one critical vulnerability.
Yeah. I mean, we could see that. Like, we see this with healthcare, too. I mean, when you look at manufacturing, a lot of the machinery they use is proprietary, right? Like, they have very customized software and hardware that they have built into the environment that cannot really be changed or updated in some cases. So, I mean, if there's a vulnerability, like, you may not be able to fix that. So
Absolutely.
how do you handle that at that point?
Well, again, it reminds me of hospitals in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You get these environments with either legacy systems or they're multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment.
Right.
They're designed to last 10, 20 years.
And they still run on Windows XP.
Yeah, and often those contracts were put in place without any security patching requirements. So yeah, speaking of the Sophos report, if you drill down, it shows that the % technical root cause of a ransomware attack is exploited vulnerability.
Yeah.
3 years in a row.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt that that's 100% accurate. I mean, we see this all the time. Whether we're looking at finance or whether we're looking at healthcare or something, when we look at those embedded systems that a lot of these organizations rely on, we tend to see these kind of vulnerabilities prop up because there's not really a great way to fix them.
Right.
So it comes down to compensating controls and other elements we can put into place like segmentation or something like that to keep them from becoming a victim. But it's tough to do. And
Well, I think this gets down to the technology supply chain, which we've been talking about all year. A couple weeks ago in our podcast, we talked about the Salesforce drift breach, which was a third-party app integration. And now we're just really talking about software vulnerabilities in general. Another really fascinating piece of this, which we were talking about, is the fact that a top root cause of ransomware attacks is known security gap that we had not addressed.
Yeah, just we haven't had time to fix yet.
They're just faster than we can keep up with.
Yeah.
And don't you think we should admit failure?
No,
Yes.
not necessarily, but I think it showcases that we need to really prioritize how we secure our networks.
Sure.
I mean that seems to be the big thing here. If we're not able to take care of something like a critical vulnerability on time because we just don't have the manpower or the resources to deal with it, then we as a general security culture just kind of need to reprioritize how we're approaching these problems.
Well, I think response.
Yeah.
And when I say we have to admit failure, we have to admit that we will never be able to button
I
up.
hate the word failure.
Okay, I know, you're type A, you're type A. But really, I think admitting that we can't keep up with every potential attack is really important. I mean, we don't have time. This pace of software exploits is increasing every year, and AI is only going to add to that.
Oh, no, it's exponential at this point, yeah.
And so response, how you respond is critical. Do you want to be able to fall back to manual processes? If you don't, how are you going to focus on recovering?
Yeah.
There was some good news in those reports.
There
I don't
was.
remember.
Yeah, no,
all right, tell me some good news.
It wasn't all bad. We were looking at the mean recovery time when it comes to ransomware at this point. And
tell me what
that's
you
a huge thing. So when we used to talk about ransomware recovery time, I mean, we used to put the median recovery time at about 23 days or something like that.
We're still seeing that quoted, and that was a stat that I think came from 3 or 4 years ago.
It is, and we're seeing organizations get a lot faster in that recovery process, and I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that I think a lot of our security programs, just in general, are including things like more robust, immutable backups, like things that we can use to get ourselves back online a lot faster.
Genuinely immutable backups are really important.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely things that are sold as immutable, like hackers can't change them, and then they can.
Well, and in a lot of the attacks we saw, from the Sophos report as an example, I mean, in a lot of the attacks we saw about half of the companies back up and running within a week. So 7 days to get from encrypted network and stolen data back up to general operational status.
That's huge because last year it was 35%, and this is according to Sophos.
Yep.
I do want to point out that Sophos looks at a specific sample set, people that have invested, I assume, in Sophos,
probably,
or that are within their community, and so there's no way to get unbiased stats on ransomware these days. So take all this with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, I think it's really key that this year half of companies are able to recover in a week compared with only a third last year.
Well, and we talk about skewed statistics in our data breaches class, but I mean it's a big thing. But even looking at Sophos versus, and I said Sophos earlier, which is a bad habit of mine. Jaguar, yeah.
Dino Kibi.
Exactly. No, but I mean looking at their statistics versus SentinelOne statistics or Mandiant or someone like that. I mean, we're seeing a general downward trend in how long it takes companies to actually recover. And again, I think a lot of it has to do with the proactive means that we're taking to, stop a large portion of downtime from happening in the first place.
Yeah.
It also comes with us having and I just had a conversation with a client earlier today about the definition of immutable.
Yes.
What does that mean? And I think a lot more a lot more companies who are offering backups, like Acronis or Rubrik or someone like that. I mean, they're really getting into the true definition of immutable. Like
so backups are getting better.
Backups are getting better.
Yes.
We're not relying on Veeam, because Veeam gets tanked by like every ransomware group right now. Sorry, Veeam. But no, I mean it means that like we have that availability. We can bring ourselves back up, and like, yes, it will take a week or so to get back up and running, but it's better than a month.
Okay, but 16% of organizations, according to Sophos, were fully recovered within 1 day.
That's solid.
1 day.
I love that stat. Yeah.
I am not convinced that those are in cases where encryption is a factor, though, because the other thing, it looks like these were all analyzed together, from what I could tell. One of the big trends was that data encryption dropped to only 50% of attacks. That's the lowest level in 6 years. So what they're saying is that half the time attackers are stealing your data and saying, we're going to leak it to the world unless you pay a ransom demand. And they're not even bothering to encrypt your stuff. Which, honestly, if I were running an international crime syndicate, I would go that route because it sounds way easier.
Oh, no, so much easier.
So much easier. That's the lazy way.
Well, remember, like the IHG
extortion.
hackers, like when they were talking about what they did to like a Holiday Inn at that point. Yeah,
they were from Vietnam.
From Vietnam, they tried to deploy ransomware.
They couldn't. Holiday Inn,
International Hotel Group. They tried to deploy ransomware. They couldn't get it to work, and so they just said like, we'll just delete the database files instead.
They were literally quoted by the BBC saying that. So we just decided to delete the data. Like, okay. Well, it's good that their ransomware was blocked. Well, and bad that they just decided to hit delete.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they had that whole thing like, we're sure it's not going to cause that big of a problem because they're a giant organization. It reminds me of Nelson from The Simpsons. Have you heard that quote before?
I don't think so.
So he talks about shoplifting, how it's a victimless crime, like punching someone in the dark, and like that is basically how they like describe that entire situation.
I grew up in a retail store. Shoplifting is not, as my family store, it is not a victimless crime. But whatever. I will know if you take that rolling pin.
There we go.
Hunt you down and I will kill you.
Wow. Okay. That got dark.
Okay, so another really interesting trend, moving on, is that email-based vectors of attack rose significantly. So 18% of the time, ransomware attacks were traced back to phishing emails, up from 11% the prior year.
Yep.
I mean, how much do you think is related to AI?
I think a lot of that is related to AI. I mean, when we look at how phishing campaigns are going right now, and we've talked about this before, I mean, the things that we used to tell people on how to spot a phishing email used to be fairly simple.
Spelling errors.
Yeah, look for spelling errors, weird punctuation, weird sentence structure, something like that. You integrate AI, especially if someone's already had an account compromised and their conversations can be analyzed. I mean, you can match someone's conversation style like instantly with even commercial tools like
it doesn't have to be just canned language anymore.
No. I mean, if you
so creepy.
And like you can use something like ChatGPT or Claude or something like that, and it will automatically mimic that style.
Well, and hackers are looking on the dark web, and it was so interesting to me when we were looking at ads for hacker tools, how many of them have like now with AI built into them, just like in our legitimate ecosystem. So oh my God, you're making me think when people break into email, like business email compromise, there's probably tools to automatically analyze the language and then get more victims using your style of speech.
Yeah, or interjecting into your already existing conversations or something like that. I mean, we've seen that attack before. It's not new. It's just better now.
It's so creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, well that I think was the last point I wanted to make about the Sophos ransomware paper, the state of the ransomware, which came out this summer.
Right.
And totally worth reading, you guys. It's not super long. It has lots of pretty charts like this with really interesting information. So thanks, Sophos, for your excellent report. It was really well done. With that, why don't we talk about how we can protect ourselves and what some actionable takeaways are?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the very first thing we want to do is make sure that we, especially when we're looking at our ICS systems and our Internet of Things devices like cameras and things like that, I mean, we want to prioritize patch management. That is one of the biggest ways that we see attackers breaking into networks at this point. It's just outdated software.
And known vulnerabilities.
Yep.
Implement continuous third-party risk monitoring. You know, one thing we didn't mention is that the Jaguar Land Rover attack, there was another one earlier this year where hackers broke in and they actually exfiltrated huge volumes of sensitive information. I do wonder if it was at all related to this later attack.
I mean,
maybe
probably.
We'll find out at some point. But nonetheless, that happened because an LG employee was hacked with info-stealing malware, so third party. And then once those credentials were stolen, they then wormed their way into JLR as well.
Yeah, they went in through the Jira instance they used, right? Yeah.
Yep. So there's multiple ways that we have to be conducting third-party risk monitoring, TPRM, on a regular basis.
Oh, God, that acronym.
I think it's important.
It is important, but it's like it's popping up so much more frequently lately. Like, third-party risk management is a giant thing. Like, we really need to be cognizant of it.
Yeah.
The other thing you need to be careful of is your IT and your OT separation in networks. And we see this all the time when we talk about manufacturing or we talk about healthcare or anything that has, operational technology. So MRI machines, cameras, anything like that, they need to be segmented. Because if they're not, there are several instances that we've seen over the last year or so where somebody has gotten a foothold on a printer or the printer stuff. I know
the
we
FDA
can look
just
back to that. Yeah.
recalled a heart device.
Yeah.
It didn't recall it. It announced a critical vulnerability in a heart device.
Sure, but getting a foothold in a printer, a camera, or something else can lead to a pivot into the rest of your network.
Yes.
And so if they're not properly segmented, then you're kind of opening the door at that point.
Well, and again, manufacturing, healthcare, all kinds of organizations, when you have things on your network, often they can't be up. There's limitations to how they can be upgraded.
For those of you who want to see exactly how this goes, check out How I Met Your Printer by Tom Pohl, which is on our website.
So good.
It is so good, and it showcases exactly how this works.
Yeah. Okay, adopt 24/7 detection and response, a SOC or an MDR. Do not rely on your internal IT team unless you're a giant corporation and your internal IT team is like dozens and dozens of people.
Yeah.
Because I guarantee you, if you have a 3-person IT staff, some of them are going to want to take a vacation or get sleep or whatever it is. So you really want to outsource, and that way, when the ransomware hits at Friday at 10 o'clock at night, you will be able to detect and respond to that before Monday morning.
Well, remember, 75% of the time these attacks take place at night or over the weekend. So
exactly.
it's
holidays.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
The next thing you want to do, make sure that you are, so if you have backups and you are, confident in them, make sure you test them. What does Karen Springer, our chief...
Test your backups or you don't have
backups. Yeah.
Karen Springer, shout out.
No, I love it, and I think it's a great sentiment to make. It's something that comes up in tabletop exercises all the time. We ask people, do you have backups for your system? And most people will say yes.
Well, cloud is a big gap right now.
Cloud's huge.
Take a look at your Microsoft 365. Ideally, you want to be backing that up with a third-party app. What you say, Microsoft, they're not backing this up for me by default. That's the answer, kind of. But really, you want to make sure you understand exactly what is backed up, what the risks are of those being overwritten by a malicious adversary, and have a backup plan. We definitely recommend having a third-party backup tool.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Okay, speaking of tabletop exercises, we have been conducting more tabletop exercises this quarter than I think we ever have.
My God, my life is tabletop exercises
I know,
right
we're
now.
both leaving on the airplane tomorrow. Yes, conduct tabletop exercises to prepare your leadership and even your technical teams for ransomware decision-making, to really figure out where the challenges are with communication, what's going to happen in real life. I would say make sure you're including your cyber insurance, because often we don't include those in tabletops, and then in real life you call your insurer. They have specific priorities and preferences, and you want to make sure you know those.
That's a finding in most of my tabletops. No one knows when to call cyber insurance. And the answer is early.
And if you do, what are they going to say? Who are they going to approve? All that stuff.
Finally, make sure you are looking at what your recovery speed actually looks like.
Yeah.
So if you do have to recover from backups, which, hopefully you never do, but if you do, how long is that actually going to take, realistically? And that is a question that pops up in a lot of the exercises that we do. If you have executives breathing over your shoulder asking when is the network going to be back online, you need to be able to give them an answer.
And you need to set their expectations now that if everything comes down, it might be weeks.
Yes.
Because there is a big difference between recovering from an accidental outage versus recovering from a ransomware attack. When the criminals have gotten in your infrastructure, you can't just willy-nilly go restoring any random backup.
Yeah.
You have to make sure it's something that's not infected, or you could get hit a second time.
Well, and that's where we get into the entire order of operations, having a network map put together, having a dependency map. There's a lot of steps that go into this, so make sure you're doing that proactively so that you're not doing it on the fly during something like a cyber attack, because that's the worst possible time to do that.
Recovery will almost certainly take you longer than you think, so make sure everyone's prepared for that, and longer than you want.
Absolutely.
So,
all right.
With that, thank you so much for tuning in to Cyberside Chats. My name is Sherri Davidoff.
I'm Matt Durrin.
Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next week.